Day 4 of World War II, September 4th, 1939, saw continued escalation of the war in Europe, particularly in Poland, with key events in the air and at sea as the global conflict spread. Here are the main developments from that day. RAF's first attack on Germany. On September 4th, 1939, the Royal Air Force launched its first offensive operation of the war, targeting German naval installations. The attack focused on the German naval fleet near Wilhelmshaven in the Heligoland Bight, a key German port area on the North Sea. The operation was not very successful, as many bombs missed their targets, and some RAF bombers were shot down. 8 RAF bombers were lost in the mission. Despite the limited impact, this marked the beginning of Britain's offensive air campaign against Germany. German Blitzkrieg advances in Poland. The Blitzkrieg continued in Poland with devastating effect. The German military advanced deeper into Polish territory from multiple directions, overwhelming Polish forces with speed, firepower and air superiority. Warsaw, the Polish capital, came under increased threat, though it would hold out for several more weeks. German forces captured several important towns and strategic positions, cutting through Polish defences. Polish forces, though courageous, struggled against the coordinated German assaults, with many units forced to retreat. German U-boats continued their attacks on British shipping. Following the sinking of the SS Athenia on September 3rd, more merchant vessels were targeted by Kriegsmarine U-boats. The early days of the Battle of the Atlantic began to unfold as German submarines sought to blockade Britain by attacking its vital supply lines. Evacuations begin in Britain. Anticipating air raids and possible invasion, Britain began a large-scale evacuation of children, mothers, and other vulnerable civilians from major cities like London and Birmingham to the countryside. This was part of Operation Pied Piper, which had already started just before the declaration of war. Around 1.5 million people would be evacuated over the course of the operation. The fear of German bombings, which would later come true during the Blitz, prompted this massive effort to protect civilians. Britain and France mobilize. Britain and France, now officially at war with Germany, continued to mobilize their armed forces, but large-scale ground operations had not yet begun on the Western Front. The period of relative inactivity on the ground, while both sides fortified their positions, would soon be called the Phony War or Blitzkrieg. While Britain began preparations to send troops to France, the British Expeditionary Force, no immediate attacks on Germany were launched. The small but determined Polish Navy began relocating some of its ships to Britain under the code name Operation Peking, to avoid being destroyed by the German Navy. Several Polish destroyers successfully reached British ports, where they would continue to fight alongside the Allies throughout the war. In the United States, President Franklin D. Roosevelt reiterated the country's neutrality stance, but continued to call for humanitarian aid to the victims of the war. While the United States remained out of the conflict at this point, public opinion began to shift as news of the German invasion of Poland and U-boat attacks reached American shores. Summary of Day 4. RAF bombers launched the first British attack on German naval targets, marking the beginning of the air war between Britain and Germany. German forces continued their rapid advance through Poland, gaining more territory and pressuring Polish defences. German U-boat attacks on British merchant ships intensified, beginning the Battle of the Atlantic. Britain continued large-scale civilian evacuations to the countryside, preparing for expected German air raids. Britain and France further mobilized their forces, though no major ground offensives occurred on the Western Front. The Polish Navy began relocating some ships to Britain for safety. Day 4 of World War II saw the conflict continue to spread, with early air and naval battles taking shape, while the German invasion of Poland progressed rapidly. The war was beginning to expand beyond Poland as the major powers of Europe positioned themselves for the battles to come.